Okay, so we've talked about chemical properties. Now I want to talk about physical properties. Physical properties are what it's like. You can see what it's like. They're how you describe it. If you just had a piece of something and you had to describe it, you'd talk about its physical properties. You're not going to mix it with anything. You're not going to react it with anything. You're not going to change it in some way. That would be for its chemical properties. Its physical properties are what you can see in front of you. Now, there's two kinds of physical properties. There's intrinsic properties and extrinsic properties. And as you can see, intrinsic properties are what it's like inside. It's what's special about it. It's what it's like. Its color, whether it's hard or soft, what temperature it melts at, everything that's special about it. An extrinsic property is more external. It's still something you can see. It's like how much you've got, how many grams you've got, how many liters you've got, or what temperature it is. Is it hot or cold? It's got, whether something's hot or cold has got nothing to do with it. It's external. It's not what's inside it. So let's do some examples. Well, we just talked about temperature. Temperature's external. It's an extrinsic property. So's mass. How many grams you've got. Depends on how many grams you've got, not what it is. But if you take something like its color, that's special to it. So a piece of iron is grey, or some water is transparent. Doesn't matter if you've got a lot of water or a little bit of water, it's transparent, you can see through it. Something could be soft. Some metals are soft. Sodium is very soft, you can cut it with a knife. Let's see, volume, how many liters you've got. That's external, that's extrinsic. There's some words that we haven't really used before probably. We're going to do some vocabulary exercises later. But if something's ductile, it's something like copper. Copper's a very ductile metal. You can grab hold of it and pull it and stretch it out into a wire. That's something that's ductile. If something's malleable, you can hammer it and beat it out into a thin sheet without it breaking. Or you can bend it without it breaking. So a piece of aluminum's very malleable. You can make it very thin by hammering it, or you can bend it and it doesn't break. If you got the graphite, the lead out of your pencil, that's not malleable. It breaks very easily. It's brittle. Now we know that water can be any temperature, but water only boils at one temperature, 100 degrees centigrade, as long as it's at sea level. And we'll talk about that later in the class. But the boiling point of something is set. It's always the same. And, sorry, I'm being accosted by my dog. Here she is. So, go away. Another word, lustrous. Lustrous is shiny. Think of people lusting after gold. It's shiny. Length. That's how much you've got. If you've got a piece of copper wire, you might have 1 centimeter, you might have 10 centimeters. It's got nothing to do with the copper, it's just how much you've got. And the last one, density. We're going to talk about density later in another lesson. Density is actually an intrinsic property. It's very interesting. I'm going to try out my pen, which doesn't quite work. Okay. My pen. Okay, so density is where you take a mass of something and you divide it by how much volume, how much space it takes up. You'll see that the mass is an extrinsic property and the volume is an extrinsic property, but the density is intrinsic. You end up with something that's specific, special for that substance. We'll learn more about density. So, what we've had is we've had chemical properties and physical properties. Chemical properties are how things react with other things. It's how they behave when they're mixed with something else. A physical property, you can find a physical property of something without changing it. It's what it's like by itself, all by itself. You can have intrinsic physical properties or extrinsic physical properties. Extrinsic physical properties are just how much you've got, or external things. How hot it is, how big it is, how much you've got. An intrinsic property is what it's like inside. It's special for it. In fact, most of these things you can just look up in a book. If you look up aluminum in a book, you'd see that it was shiny grey, it's soft, it's ductile, it's malleable, its boiling point is, I don't know, I'll make up a number, it's many hundreds of degrees centigrade. And I don't know if it's lustrous, it always looks kind of, I guess it can be. Yes, it's lustrous like aluminum foil, and it's got quite a low density for a metal. Those are numbers you can look up. Extrinsic property, if I look up aluminum, I'm not going to find out its mass, its volume, or its length, because that depends on how much I've got.